Hello, my name is Jason Gorski. I'm the Director of Winemaking and Viticulture here at the Little Cellars in Woodinville, Washington.
突然ですがこんにちはオルカです。ワインメーカーのジェイソンさんの説明がクールすぎてようわからへん人のために、ちょこちょこ出てきて補足させていただきますのでよろしくお願いします。また後ほど。
Today I'm going to talk a little bit about this gem of a wine right here, 2019 Grand Seal Cabernet. Perhaps the culmination of 2 decades of hard work here at DeLille, recently awarded 99-point score from Robert Parker. I personally, at 1 point away, it makes me happy. We've come so far, but we've got this a little bit further to go, and I think that we might be tempted to make the same wine vintage over vintage, but 99 means not quite there. There's still some work to be done, and we can let the vintage speak for itself every vintage. We don't have to try to force the vineyard to be something that it's not. So we can just allow the conditions to come to us.
はいどうも。要は100点なんか取っちゃったらもうこれでいいわと甘えちゃって。毎年あの感じでやったらええにゃんと燃え尽きたくないねんな。まだまだ努力しようぜとチーム一丸となって頑張れる99点っていうのがベストやと思うねん。という男前な発言やな。
So Grand Seal Vineyard is our own estate vineyard on Red Mountain. So where we're planted was in the area where the earliest vines on Red Mountain were planted. So we have some well-known neighbors, also with a high level of acclaim.
はい、ここな。これめっちゃ重要やから、レッドマウンテンというのはワシントンで一番高級なワインを生み出す AVA やねん。さらっと自社畑言うてるけどあそこに自社畑あるってすごいことやから。うち所有のエシェゾーの畑な、言うてるようなもんやから、いやそれ余計にわかりにくいか。あ、レッドマウンテンってこの赤い場所な、見えにくい？ここ。
The biggest difference here at Grand Seal is that when the vines were going in the ground prior to that, the vineyard went into the ground about 2000. Prior to 2000, there was only really one clone of Cabernet in Washington State. And so now at Grand Seal, we actually have 4 different clones of Cabernet. Prior to 2000, there would have only been clone 8.
待ってそれな、クローン言うやつ。クローン言われたらなんか試験管入って、科学的に増やされるイメージ持つやろ。それ全然ちゃうから、欲しいブドウの種類を差し引して土の上で地道に育てるねん。
We do have some clone 8 at Grand Seal, but we also have clone 2, 169, and the amazing clone that we have here with this bottling, clone 191. Other differentiations here, there was much wider spacing, was much more common prior to when our vineyard went in the ground. So we are around 2,000 vines per acre, very dense. And we also planted the vineyard slightly off the north-south axis, just because of how far north we are. The intent here, and you can really see it in the middle of the heat of the growing season, is that when the sun is directly overhead, just because of the angles, the canopy is equally shaded on both sides. Strictly north-south, you're actually getting less shade in the hottest part of the day.
これ、どうやろ？わかってくれたかな？南北にブドウの列が植えられてたらブドウの東からと西から、裏と表っ側から太陽が当たるねんな。両サイド同じ時間分だけ太陽に当てたい仕掛けも作りたいねん。でもワシントン州は緯度も高いしまっすぐ南北に向けたら同じ時間にはならんのよ。この辺の話は現役小学生の方が詳しいと思うから聞いてみて。
So yeah, that's kind of the differentiators there. Everything is own rooted, like most of Washington State. And the vineyard was planted in 2000, so for this vintage, we're just about out of that adolescent phase and really starting to hit its stride at 19 years old. Over the years, over that 15 or so years that we've been producing wine from the Grand Seal vineyard, this clone 191 has always stood out, and we've occasionally try to blend something else in with this block just to see if we can actually get some benefit to blending in other clones or other, even individual barrels from this site. And any addition of any other fruit actually just diminishes the expression that we can get from this single block.
まああれよ。めちゃめちゃいろいろ試した上での単一クローン単一畑になったんやな。
Mountain in Washington in general. Red Mountain is definitely the warmest AVA in Washington State. So everything we do for the farming standpoint for this block is really to try to slow everything down. How far north we are in Washington, we get a lot less daylight, a lot less heat during those harvest months than, say, California does. So by the time we hit October, our high for the day comes very, very late in the day, and it's a little bit misleading. If we see that it's going to be 86 degrees, it doesn't happen until 4 o'clock at night, and then we can get a low of only 45 or 50 degrees in the evening.
待って、ここ難しないけど重要やから言わせて。 収穫をする10月は16時頃に最高気温が30度になり、夜になると気温は7から10度まで下がるねんて、ものすごい昼夜の気温差やでブドウはこういう場所が大好きやねん。
So even if we pick this fruit at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, it'll still show up in the winery freezing cold because the fruit really hasn't warmed up. Really what makes Washington so distinct in that way is that we can get this additional hang time. So
はい、ハングタイムねブドウが木にぶら下がってる時間のこと。あんまり感じの日本語がないのよ。
lower potential alcohol because sugars aren't increasing, better acidity retention because it's just not so hot to have the vine metabolize acid. But then we also get the benefit of the fruit being able to stay on the vine, slowly accumulate sugar, but also get hang time complexity. So everything about the vineyard is really hoping to accentuate that. Traditional pruning techniques on the cordon, basically you have an established wood on the wire and then every new year there's new shoots that grow. For this block, we actually do cane pruning or guillot training, where we would take all that established wood and prune it off every single vintage, lay down a fresh cane, and everything grows off of that. So that
はい、もう何言うてるか全然わからんし、ちょっとさっきの畑の画像に戻るで。基本冬場の葉っぱが全部落ちた後の剪定方法の話してんねんな。で、最初に出てきた伝統的なコルドンという方法は、葉っぱが落ちてこんな感じに残ってる枝をここでちょん切る。ほんで新しい枝はここから育つっちゅうこっちゃ。火力よ。ほんで元に戻るでこっちはグランシエルの方法や。ギヨしたてな。これはここから切ってしまうねん。はいなんもない。この状態から新年度はすべて新しい芽が育つのよ。
that really does is forces the vine to spend a lot more energy on growth early season and really slows down the fruit development. So we can get even deeper into the season at lower potential alcohol here for this wine, which just helps keep everything fresh, balanced, concentrated, all the things that you really want from a wine. Honestly, from a winemaking perspective, we really want the vineyard to express itself. In a lot of ways, this is the simplest wine for us to make in that we prioritize when we pick it, what fermenter it goes into, when we press it, and into what barrels. We actually use 100% new oak. And really what we're trying to do with the oak selection is to make sure so that we choose cooperage partners that really respect the fruit, but can also accentuate the flavors. So it's been a long time coming and fine-tuning the cooperage program here, but we work with some of the individual stave-selected programs with some of our cooperage partners. So traditionally, the highest end barrel would come from very specific forest sites in France. But a lot of the barrels that go into this program are actually, every single stave that's in these barrels is actually analyzed.
こんな細かい樽の話あんまりせえへんけどな。樽を作る木の産地がどうのというどころか、樽の部品となる板一枚一枚にもこだわるっちゅう話やねん。
So we're talking about really tight grain, analyzed to make sure that we don't have anything astringent or that we don't want. And often aged, the stave itself aged for longer than a traditional barrel. So really respectful of fruit and just cloaking the fruit in this lovely oak character and elevating the wine. So over 20 years, we've learned a lot about this vineyard site and how to help the fruit best express itself. And then in the cellar, same thing. We're just constantly learning. About half of this wine is actually native fermented. So we're just using the vineyard species to kind of kick that ferment off, give us even more complexity for the wine. So put it all together. And this is what one point, one little bit away from perfection looks and smells like. It's so hard for us as winemakers to have a favorite. I mean, I think this wine always overperforms, I would say. I think when we go to bottle, we let this wine rest for an additional year in the bottle. And that, at release, I always try the wine and it always seems to be better than I thought its potential could be. So I think personally, I'm still learning just how good this wine can be. The one thing I would say about this 2019, although it was a challenging vintage, and what stands out for me for the 2019s in general, especially this wine, really great aromatics. So I think it's just that's the little extra. You got everything you want to looking for in a wine with depth, complexity, concentration, focus from being from a single vineyard site, a single clone. But that little bit of additional intrigue on the nose, just a little bit more extra fruit flavors and extra oak flavors and like a perfumed character that really helps this wine stand out, and I think maybe, contributed to those couple extra points.
デリールセラーズのワインメーカージェイソンさんによる、グランシエルの解説楽しんでいただけたでしょうか？ぶっちゃけ安くはないけど価値はあると思うわ。これめちゃめちゃ貴重なワインでなんと5年ぶりの入荷やて、ワシントン州のラフィットロートシルトいう単はオルカじゃなくてパーカーさんやからな。機会があったら飲んでみてな。ほなまたなー。